all the participants. You are from more than 20 countries, and about 500 were registered. So this is to tell you the interest for this initiative. I'd like to thank Professor Riri, Fitri, Sari from Indonesia, who will deliver just after my talk, small talk, a little presentation of the Greenmetric barometer. Professor Sylvie Faucheux, with the Dean of INSEEC group, has decided to organize this symposium, and I warmly thank her for this initiative. Her idea was that usually we follow changes in pedagogy and tools and education at a national scale. And due to the COVID context, we have observed an incredible revolution due to COVID. And it was interesting for us to share how we have been confronted to this shock and have transformed the experience of education in many, many countries in this period. What do we mean or include in the disruptive learning pathways? It's a lot of different things. Of course, it's the tools, presential or distential, and this is connected with online education, of course. The contents and topics like soft skills or green skills are more and more at the top of the agenda. We can also discuss new learning environment, new campuses, smart campuses, green campuses, and you will discuss this all the day long, and I think it's an important topic for us. And also the new management of education. Maybe we have a bias because we are a private for-profit group, but when you look at education worldwide, you see that there is a change in the balance between the public sector, the non-profit sector, and the for-profit sector. And this is also something that change the way education can be considered. The reason why this seminar starts now is obviously the COVID momentum. The pandemic has led governments all over the world to stop partly all the level or some levels, higher education or schools, and decided to close for a period of time. The situation is different in each country, but the pandemic has strongly affected education as a place where people meet, gather, and are taught. Of course, it has been also an accelerator for a move which previously existed, which is online teaching, and the trend to develop ed tech, which is a worldwide move, has also been accelerated. And what has been incredible was the fact that suddenly there was a kind of lab where everything has been transformed into a 100% online education experience for all the students and all the teachers. Of course, the closure has been a terrible pain, and the digital solution has been an incredible pain reliever. Despite in-presence education termination, it has been able to continue online to educate. But simultaneously, and I think this is interesting, it has revealed how much in situ and in-campus education was a global experience. It's a pedagogic experience, it's a social experience, it's a human experience. It happens in classes, it happens outside classes, and it has revealed that online solutions cannot easily replace the experience we deliver to our students in campuses. At INSEEC, our main lessons is yes, there is a strong value of online courses, provided that they are combined with adequate pedagogic experience, Q&A, teacher support. This is a first learning. The frustration of students is another one. I mean, 100% online is probably difficult to sustain in the long run. Also, the opportunities that has been given to some students to discover new topics and the hungriness for cross-fertilization between disciplines. The need to have a very modern, up-to-date, highly functional learning management system to deliver properly what can be delivered to the students. And finally, also, the need to train and coach the teachers when you are switching to a complete online education. And I will conclude on that. Full online teaching has been a solution. It's a solution that has, in the meantime, revealed its limits. Students are not only learning brains, they are social persons, and campuses are their universe of belonging. Studying is not only getting information, it's a global experience. It's not a teacher-to-student bilateral exchange. When you study, you're nourished through teachers, peers, groups, situations. You learn in classes, you learn outside classes, and beside immediate learning situation, you need also to develop informal discussions and peers communications. Of course, we need to give a place to online teaching, but this place has to be carefully managed and combined with a new thinking about the way it happens in our campuses. And this is one reason why at INSEEC we've decided to create a disruptive learning pathway lab in order to continue to learn from this momentum. I wish you all an excellent day of discussion, a lot of learning, sharing, understanding, and I give the floor to Professor Riri, Fitri, Sari. Maybe Sylvie, you have just a word before to announce the day program.
Thank you, Mathias. Good morning, dear participants, and welcome virtually to Paris, very close to the Eiffel Tower, where our main campus is. Thank you for your interest. We have about 550 people who have been registered for the day from 21 countries on all continents. This shows how important is our topic today in the world of higher education everywhere. Let me just remind briefly the main information for the organization of the day. Professor Riri Sari, chairperson of the University of Indonesia, will explain briefly what the World Greenmetric ranking is. And I remind to you that INSEEC is the national representative in France. Then a first round table on the topic Smart and Green Campus will tackle the challenges of ecological and digital transition in higher education. After a very brief break, our keynote speaker, Professor François Tadei, from the University of Paris, will propose for his presentation an inverted and interactive format that will be animated by David Pontalier. The second round table will continue on the topic of change management in higher education before the lunch break. We will start again, please, at 1:45 because Cyril Maître, the world champion in mind mapping, will deliver his illustration of our exchanges during the morning. Then the third round table will start at 2 o'clock on the topic of how do technology and artificial intelligence affect teaching. moderated by Dr. Cormac O'Keefe from INSEEC. And the last roundtable, after a small break, will address the question of commodal high-flex teaching with Dr. Charlotte Fiol from INSEEC. Before final remarks, Cyril Melt will propose again his interpretations for the afternoon. And Professor Riri Sari from UE Greenmetric will close the day with our Director General, José Miliano from INSEEC. I wish you a very fruitful and friendly day. And now it's to Professor Riri Sari to explain what is this ranking. Thank you very much.
Good morning from Jakarta, Indonesia. I would like to say hello to President Mathias Emmerich, Executive President of INSEEC University in Paris, Director General of INSEEC, Professor Jose Milano, and my dear friend, Professor Sylvie Faucheux, which has been arranging this third workshop on UI Greenmetric in Paris for France universities. And I'm very honored, we are very honored from University of Indonesia to have this really preparedly arranged meeting in which we have many speakers from Aalborg, Paris Saclay, EPFL, Cork, Mulhouse, CRI France, Lancaster University, Soap de Poup, it's AC Montreal, Dubai, Tec de Monterrey, Mexico, Open University UK, Ohio State University, and Learn Anywhere at Tech and Université Laval. And also the selection of topic that has been provided, which is Smart and Green Campus, that will be talking about how we can organize and manage and operate our university during this COVID-19 pandemic. And also the second one is related to digital technologies and artificial intelligence. And we all know that this is our new window to put up together all our efforts to educate the next generation of our world. And I'm very happy that we are going to talk about high-flex teaching and shift to video-based teaching today. In which I can summarize that during the 10 years of UI Greenmetric, we are delighted to know that so many universities have the same vision with us, in which we are actively transforming our green campus through our robust, but also we are trying from Indonesia to provide a standard and partnership platform in which we can work together to generate a campus which is suitable to educate the next generation in the world. Secondly, I understand that COVID-19 pandemic will not only remind us of how fragile our life is. Last time when I visited you last year in the workshop in France, it was a very beautiful time in which we are right in the middle of the Paris near the Eiffel Tower. But then we know that this pandemic situation even make us close and give a lot of opportunity for our students to use MS Teams and different technologies for learning. And also, thirdly, I believe that learning from other peers is something that we can provide to accumulate all the experience that has been accumulated by all our friends all over the world, so that all students everywhere will benefit from the partnership created not only for UI Greenmetric for France University, but also for all over the world, in which our partnership in the network of UI Greenmetric have proven that we can move on to the next generation of universities services to educate our students. Ladies and gentlemen and friends everywhere, UI Greenmetric today is transforming itself to be able to be the platform for partnership for us all. And today we are going to learn not only about smart campuses and also green campus, but also how we can manage and operate our universities during this pandemic. If you know, previously we have setting an infrastructure, energy management, water management, waste management, transportation management, and also education and research in sustainability, based on sustainability. But to the future, we all know that we have to learn all these different windows in which we can transform the next generation to be more looking towards providing a better green jobs and also green approach to everything that we do, so that we can overcome all the problems that we are facing now in the world together. Ladies and gentlemen, and also participants of UI Greenmetric, and also all friends, I'm very happy that we are entering this. I would like to thank Sophie Faucheux, Sophie Brockett, and also Sylvie Faucheux from INSEEC University for all the arrangement, and also, of course, Professor Mathias Emmerich. And I look forward for a fruitful discussion today. And thank you. Back to the Master of Ceremony, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Riri. I propose now maybe to start the first round table, or have we Professor Gunawan? Yeah. Hello, Professor Gunawan. I give you the floor now to introduce your round table. We don't hear you. Maybe you have to open your microphone.
God. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning, everybody in Paris. And here is afternoon already. Let me introduce myself. I'm Gunawan Tjahjono from Indonesia. I'm an expert member of the UI Greenmetric World University Ranking Office. I am chairing the all gentlemen speakers session, which is actually not according to the Sustainable Development Goals for gender equality. But it's okay because we have 5 distinguished speakers here. I'm sorry if I pronounce wrongly your name. The first speaker will be Professor Berson from Aalborg University. The second speakers will be Professor Martin O'Connor. And then the third speaker will be Professor Albert Merino Saum. Are you here, everybody? And then we will have Professor Darren Reidy as the fourth speaker, and Hocine Sadok. Professor Hocine Sadok will close our speaker session. Then we will have about 20 minutes of discussion time. So let me say that each one of you will have about 10 to 11 minutes of presentation. So the first speaker, Professor Berson, is an associate professor at Aalborg University. He is a member of the research group for techno-anthropology and participation. He is also a think tank of techno-ethics. So we will have a philosopher here, actually. He will talk about responsible innovation. We'll talk about how techno ethics and responsibility at techno-anthropology and how smart and green campuses can be translated into ethical scrutiny. So please welcome Professor Berson.
Yes, thank you very much for this kind introduction. I have some slides. Should I share my screen? Or,
please do that.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I hope you are able to see my screen. Yes, I will just time me. Okay, so first of all, I will just say thank you very much for the invitation to take part in this important panel at this very interesting symposium. It was difficult for me to prepare this intervention because I'm actually split between the overall topic of the symposium on disruptive learning paths and the topic of this panel on smart and green campuses. So I will touch upon both here in my intervention, and I will try to link them. I've worked in the higher education industry since I graduated in chemistry and philosophy, and for 20 years I have tried to disrupt monodisciplinary university education, particularly or especially within science, engineering, and technology studies. And I've done so by trying to, or working for inclusion of social, scientific, and philosophical items into the tech study programs. Primarily, I have been teaching and developing courses on teaching responsibility to tech students. So what I will first do is to share with you my experiences with such teaching. And then later on, I will try to relate it to online education and smart and green campuses. But first, what is responsibility teaching? Well, it's teaching that draws on different disciplines, different perspectives. It draws on ethics, it draws on peace studies, and it draws on sustainability. Sciences, it includes both an individual but also a structural layer. Individuals need to make judgments and act accordingly, but also there needs to be some structural support, some support from the management, for example, and also appropriate legislative structure. It's not only knowledge, it's also judgment and action, as I mentioned. How we have been teaching responsibility is, first of all, it's important to relate the teaching to the discipline that where the responsibility is taught. For example, when I teach responsibility to chemical engineering students, for example, then it's important that the case studies are related to chemistry, or the topics that we are discussing are related to the discipline. And that's why, together with the editor-in-chief of the journal for the philosophy of chemistry, Hyle, Joachim Schumer, we have now issued, or we are issuing a book on ethical issues related to chemistry, a more than 20-chapter book. Then, regarding the form of teaching, we involve the students, they do role plays, they do case studies, they are actively involved in discussions. And what we are trying to do at the moment is also to involve external stakeholders and maybe have the students work with some real life problems of these external stakeholders. Then who should teach? Either individuals with a double competence in both ethics, sustainability and peace, or peace, and within the main discipline. And if that's not possible, then teams of teachers, so that you can have this double competence. Then we also met some barriers in doing so. One barrier lies within the scientific community. They are not always welcoming these responsibility issues. They focus on the core elements of the scientific disciplines. So in that way, we have been wanting like support from management to make this interdisciplinary teaching possible. The issues are complex. Some might even say that the dealing with these problems they cannot be solved, and maybe they are not at all scientific. But of course, that depends on your view on what research and science is. Interdisciplinarity is difficult, and it might result in rivalry between the different disciplines over the resources available. It should be a bottom-up activity. There should be some local drivers within the faculty, but they need the support to actually make that happen for allocating resources and also the needed curriculum change. And now, what we're doing now is to try to link with external partners, and then to turn this interdisciplinary endeavor into a transdisciplinary one. So, since 2010, then I have been setting up and teaching and managing our bachelor and master's program in technoanthropology, which is like an interdisciplinary program where we combine engineering and anthropology. We study technology, and actually here is the link to the topic here, because both the smart and green campus, such a transition, and also online teaching are actually very good topics for a technoanthropological analysis and treatment. Partly, of course, because it's technology, but also because it's very close, both to the faculty members and also to the students. So my proposition here is actually to address these very close technological visions, address those within interdisciplinary higher education teaching. And for the last minutes, I will just say how we would conduct such an analysis. And let me just say, this analysis will then involve different layers. I mean, we usually will start up in the micro level. What will then be, how will such transition to a smart and green campus, how will that be experienced by the users, the students, the faculty members? There will be some experts, might also be faculty members, but maybe also coming outside. And what kind of artifacts will they actually imply to make this green transition? And what we then, so these are kind of the corners, and then we will say, okay, how do the users experience this? What kind of visions? Can we involve them in design, co-design, participatory design of the solution? And can we help the designers, the experts with the technology to inscribe or implement the ethical values and the user perspectives into the solution in a way that we will, so that we will create like ownership, so that you can say that the technology in a way is a boundary object that is broad enough to reflect the interests of values of the involved partners. These solutions are like icebergs. You can see only the top of it. Within such a solution here, you have inscribed intentionality. There are certain things that needs to, the technology makes people do certain things. It reflects often powerful interests. Usually this initiative is not coming from the bottom, but we need a shared ownership of it. There might be ethical values, or there might not be ethical values involved, inscribed into the technology. Some might say it's a technical fix. There are also higher national political agenda that's also reflected in this move, and you need to have an infrastructure to involve those that you want to involve. And finally, there are different technical elements. And in dealing with these suggestions in a techno-anthropological perspective, then you will bring forward some of these inscribed items here, like the values, the interests, the underpinning assumptions of that. And when you have brought this forward, then we also try to enter into kind of a design mode where we change the course so that the user perspective and the values that we actively want to promote are reflected in the solution. So these suggestions here, they are techno-visions, and they say something about the present, not only about the future, maybe more about the present, because they reflect these interests of the stakeholders, high on research agenda, incentive structures, the zeitgeist, anxiety, view on the good life, etc., etc., etc. But they also point to the future. Where is it that we want to go? And I think we need to have, and we also need to deliberate on the values and the purpose of actually doing so. Of course, now the purpose is to address the pandemic, but in the long run, what is actually the purpose, the value of going there? We also have a 4-step model with which we teach ethics, and we can also apply that on the Smart and Green Campus vision. So what we will do then is to ask, what are the intended beneficial consequences of that? But we will also have a focus on potential misuse, potential unintended adverse side effects, and also the long-term consequences for culture and society. We then want to link them with ethical values, which we distinguish from special interests. And when it is ethics, we are promoting like ethical values like privacy, like justice.
Sorry to interrupt you, Professor Berson. You have only 1 minute to finish.
Yes, thank you. I'm almost done. So then we also identify the dilemmas, and finally we want to make suggestions both regarding technical design, what could be changed in these solutions, but also should we set up our institutions in another way, and maybe there's also a need for a new kind of legislation. So with these words, I hope I have given you an idea of how we will address the Smart and Green Campus vision at Techno-Anthropology, and we actually did the same with online education. Maybe I can return to that later today when we're discussing that, and that I have bridged the gap between disruptive learning paths, here represented by the ethical and techno-anthropological educational approach, with the Smart and Green Campus, which I suggest to be a case study to be addressed within interdisciplinary higher education. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Berson. It's quite not an easy presentation, but it's very interesting and important. So our second speaker is Professor Martin O'Connor. I think he is with us here. Hello, Professor O'Connor. He is a professor of economics at Universitet de Versailles at Saint Quentin. His domain is ecological economics, political economics, sustainability, ethics, and social security. So he currently works on the collision between ecological transition and digital transformation. He will talk about real problem-based learning. So please address your presentation.
Good morning. Can anybody see me or hear me?
Hear you is okay, but you are not turning on the camera. Probably.
We don't see you.
Well, you could see me before. I will try to share a screen. Can you see a screen?
The screen is okay. Yeah.
Disrupted learning pathways?
Yes.
In that case,
go ahead.
I will go ahead. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the round table. The presentation by Tom is a very good introduction to what I want to say. I'm going to give an example of a bottom-up approach to building disrupted learning pathways in a situation of urgency, as we know, of panic, and a situation of almost complete absence of institutional resources. The example I'm going to give is a co-production of a blended learning process undertaken in a collaborative way with the students of a master's program. I've put the list of the names of our students just so that they are recognized in the round table. 30 students in a master's program. The topic of the master's program is territorial sustainable development, and in the formal definition of the competencies being sought through this master's program, we see topics like the four I mentioned here: advanced and specialized uses of digital communication tools, development and integration of specialized knowledge domains, including bringing together knowledge from different fields of competence to deal with practical territorial sustainability problems, advanced communication skills for knowledge mediation, which means that we are conscious of the challenges of using different forms of knowledge in practical situations, capacity building for change management in professional context. These competencies were established in the framing of the program. These have been validated as the frame at the level of the Ministry of Higher Education in France. This was the position before the pandemic, before the coronavirus situation broke out. So this declaration of intention has a completely new meaning in the situation where we must try to put into place a teaching program with almost no physical contact between students, and also no physical contact between the teachers in the program. In fact, the absence of contact between the teachers and the staff of the program is even more severe than the absence of contact between the students. So we set in place a declaration of a blended learning strategy where we stated that we have a task. We need to seek high teaching quality for the master's program in the situation of disruption. We need to transform this situation of disruption into a opportunity, into a unique learning opportunity where students as well as teachers must become competent with new digital learning processes, and where we must take up the challenge explicitly of addressing what I call wicked problems and the challenge of consultation, of collective action, of coordination in situations of crisis. So what we tried to do was transform our practical problem of maintaining a learning process, transform this into a problem that we are addressing in a practical way. That means that we consider that the teaching program is itself an example of action research. We are required to identify risks, dilemmas, opportunities associated with the conditions of confinement, of deconfinement, of constraint, and the different complications of our situation. And we need to investigate ways, in practical terms, often in very modest ways, of capacity building, allowing us to move into and then beyond the uncertainties. So this requires us to put in place innovative and creative solutions in a very practical way on a reflexive and collaborative basis. That means that we have needed to transform the teaching program into problem-based learning. The core question is a practical one: what is to be done in our difficult situation? And the main resources, almost the only resources we have available, are the human resources of the students and of the small number of teaching staff who are committed to build these practical solutions. The structure of this is that part of the course has been transformed into working groups, which I call task forces, which take up the practical responsibility of investigating and carrying out the learning about different aspects of blended learning processes. The students are required to develop their knowledge and understanding of these different processes, the tools, the practices, the difficulties associated with them, and the students undertake, they are currently doing this work, an auto-evaluation of the options and opportunities for action. That means they need to identify the different quality criteria, the criteria for judging success and failure, and who are the key stakeholders, themselves and others around them. And their academic work includes the documentation of this work of identifying possible solutions, evaluating to what extent they respond to the difficulties, the challenges, and this becomes in itself, the documentation becomes teaching and learning resources for other people who may also need to do this type of transition. So what we have, in a sense, is we find ourselves at the beginning of the teaching year in September. We are plunged into the jungle of an obligation of engaging a hybrid or blended learning process. There are many different tools which are presented as being available. Everybody understands very quickly that the existence of a tool, the existence of the internet, the existence of, for example, video conference technologies like Teams, like Zoom, like Meeting, and so on, the existence of tools is not a solution. The solution comes from the capacity of people to make good practical use of these tools, and that means building problems and seeking experience through engaging with those problems. We have, in sense, had a complete inversion of our original idea of the use of digital technology. You see here an example of using a quite sophisticated interactive screen situation with students in a group situation where students are working simultaneously on their own computers, contributing material in an interactive way that we can see visualized on the big screens. There is a permanent interface between using the technology and the human contact in the room. With the pandemic situation, the possibility of having this simultaneous exploitation of digital technologies plus physical presence has been completely broken. We are required to rebuild to an incomplete way some degrees of contact uniquely through the distance learning and visualization processes. I want to mention, just in the couple of minutes that I have still available, the way that we've structured the engagement of the students to take up this challenge of learning and what it means for our vision of the learning program itself. You see on this slide a presentation of the work packages, the organization of the groups within the class. As I've said, there are about 30 students in the class. So we have 8 groups, not counting the piloting or coordination, and each group has 3 or 4 students in it. One group is engaged to identify what it means to build and work with the blended learning space. Another group is looking at what are the challenges of maintaining and building and renewing conviviality between the students and also the teaching staff. What are the challenges of quality, integrity, and safety in a very complex health as well as physical displacement situation? These are issues which are picked up by the students and become the object of their analysis and their presentations. We also have matters dealing directly with the teaching process. What are the types of teaching resources that can be mobilized in the situation of obligatory separation? What are the processes of collaborative learning that we can put in place? Do they work? In what ways do they work? And what are the procedures for assessment of students' work that can be implemented with very limited resources apart from the basic access? We have a practical situation where several of the students in the master's program have got very limited technological resources. Many of them are trying to connect into Zoom or into Teams using their smartphone. This is clearly an extremely constraining situation. So the material, the physical, the financial constraints are very real constraints, but notwithstanding, there has been a challenge taken up, and the attempt is to put in place and to document the solutions. What it means is that instead of teaching one program, which is looking at territorial sustainability, this program is called Jetadalo. It's the first-year master's program. Instead of teaching one program, we find that we are actually engaged in building teaching capacity and learning processes in 3 complementary dimensions. One is territorial sustainability, capacity building, with that as a professional orientation. The second is that we are learning about doing blended learning. And this is the learning taking place by the students, with the students, for the students. They are seen as the primary targets. People like me will be retired in a few years. Those students are going to live in the digital world for the next 40 years of their active professional lives. They are the ones where learning about these technologies is perhaps the priority. And there is a third dimension which is set out in the orange on the page, building capacities to address in a practical way, to address situations of risk, of confusion, of uncertainty, where there are challenges to define ways to move forward. These challenges need to be resolved in a pragmatic way at a collective level, which means that the challenge is to rebuild autonomy. The challenge is to build up the experience of the possibility to be creative, to contribute to each other, and to create solutions at a modest level, not simply be dependent on the lockdown processes that are declared at the level of the government, whether it is in France or elsewhere. So that is the emergent reality of the teaching learning process that we are engaged in. We are engaged, in a sense, in 3 programs simultaneously, and I think that this is a quite good example of the vision that Tom has just presented before. We are obliged not only to break down boundaries and to engage with different domains of knowledge, we are obliged also to build up practical processes of sharing knowledge and defining capacity for action in ways that are not at all part of the official curriculum. So in this sense, we are engaged in disruptive learning processes as a question of survival. Thank you very much. That's where I want to stop with my little presentation.
Oh, okay, thank you very much, Professor O'Connor. May I have the third speaker, Professor Merino Saum, Are you here with all of us? I haven't seen your name. Professor Merino Saum, Albert.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm here.
Good. Let me introduce briefly about you. He's a senior scientist at the Laboratory on Human-Environment Relations in Urban Systems. Yeah, we are now living in urban conditions at Swiss Federal Institute of Technology at Lausanne. His research focuses on decision and methods for sustainability and green economy indicators. So his research area is very close to Greenmetric. He will talk about the challenges and opportunities that sustainability science assessment involve in man-environment context. So, Professor Merino Saum.
Just a moment, we have a problem with microphone. If everybody can close microphone, please.
Okay.
You can start, Albert. Il y a un problème? Albert? Oh, merde, ça s'est arrêté.
Oh, okay, Albert, can you start?
C'est Albert qui va avoir un problème.
Okay. So, if Albert...
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I go ahead. I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know if you can see my slides, please.
Okay, not yet at the moment.
The connection doesn't seem to work very well, unfortunately. It's very slow.
Okay, because everybody is using that kind of device.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. Okay, can you see it now?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet, not yet.
No, we cannot see.
Oh. I don't know how to proceed because on my laptop it is written that I am sharing the screen.
So maybe we can switch.
Yeah, if you don't mind, then I will turn to Professor Reidy first, and then you can come up after that. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine with me. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry about the condition, but this is a technical problem, sorry. Professor Reidy is an acting sustainability officer at University College Cork. University College Cork has a very high ranking in UI Greenmetric World University ranking. He specializes in areas of ecological conservation, environmental management, and sustainable development. So he will share about the experience of University College Cork, which is, to me, is very interesting on all aspects of green indicator. So, Professor Reidy, are you ready? Okay, the time is yours for 10 to 12 minutes the most.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Darren Reidy. I'm from University College Cork in Ireland, and I'm just going to share my screen with you right now. Is that visible to you? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Thank you. So I'm going to discuss with you our whole institution approach to embedding sustainable development and sustainability citizenship across our university and our community. Our journey in sustainable development started about 15 years ago, and since then we've had a complete institutional transformation across all elements of the university. 15 years ago, the program of sustainability was originally inspired by a group of students that voiced concerns over certain waste management and environmental management actions that were taking place on campus. And these legitimate concerns were heard by the university management when the students challenged them to lead by example. And so with university management, in collaboration with the students and some support from the wider community, put in a process in place to address these environmental challenges and find solutions. And as a result of that process, UCC became the first university in the world to be awarded a green flag by the Foundation for Environmental Education, which is based in Denmark. And the Green Flag program is essentially a 7-step environmental management system, which rather than focusing on targets, focuses on continual improvement. And one of the core values of the Foundation for Environmental Education and the Green Flag program is that, as well as integrating environmental management systems, you also produce an environment and a community where sustainability and environmental consciousness are at the core of your students, so that as they graduate and move through life, they carry those values with them. And so over the last 15 years, we've had some huge successes, and you can see some of our stats down there at the bottom. And we've received a lot of international recognition in terms of the various metrics that are out there, including always having been consistently quite high, ranking quite highly in the UI Greenmetric, and we are the national contact point for Ireland as well. And in 2018, we were the first university outside of North America to have a gold star awarded from the Sustainability Tracking and Assessment Rating System from ASHI in North America. But while these metrics are important to celebrate and our successes are important to celebrate, they also provide a good way of identifying the gaps in our current management and showing us where we need to improve. And that's something we've always benefited from in these metrics. At our core, our sustainability motto at UCC is that we are student-led, research-informed, and practice-focused. And we move forward based on the principles of representation, active participation, and collaboration across the university community. And so if we were to identify some of the key enablers of our success down through the years, the first key enabler that we would point out is the people. In order to be successful as a green campus, you need to have every aspect of the university community represented and actively participating. And if you think of active citizens that actively participate in wider society, citizens need to be represented, they need to have leadership, and they need to have an effective administration to support them in delivering their goals. So in UCC, we have put in place these 3 kind of structures which feed into and off of each other in order to ensure that citizens are engaged at all levels of the university. We have the Green Campus Committee, which is student-led. It's chaired by the Students' Union and the Environmental Society of Students. And these are a committee of students which are elected by their peers to speak on their behalf and to stand up and challenge us and voice their opinions in terms of environmental sustainability. We have the Green Forum, which is our platform for the university leaders, and that is chaired by our president, Professor John O'Halloran, and our director of buildings and estates, Mark Poland. And the Green Forum is basically where all the leaders of the university in terms of heads of school and high-level management come together And they ensure that the UCC sustainability strategy is then integrated into all of the other university strategies and policies. And then they lead their feedback to their own departments where the sustainability review group sits. And these are the people on the ground that are involved in the running of the campus on a day-to-day basis, the people that know how the university works and responsibility for integrating these policies and delivering them in a practical manner. So what is key here, though, is that staff and students from academia, research, administration, operation and management are represented in all of these committees. Our second key enabler is that we always strive to foster bottom-up activism and behavioural change. And when you're trying to do this, we try to engage with people at an individual level, at a social level, and at an infrastructural or a material level. And we need to do this we need to create platforms and lines of communication that will allow encouragement and engagement of the individual beliefs and values of the people throughout the university, that we create platforms for the cultural norms to be shared and communicated with us, that we take time to understand emotional reactions, and that we ensure that all of our students and staff have agency and choice and are involved in the decision-making process. We then also have to remove the barriers to these behavioural changes and activism that we want to enable and encourage. And this might be take the form of providing infrastructural changes or providing alternative solutions that will make the responsible choices easier to undertake. And so in these photos, we have images of basic little infrastructural changes that actually are green nudges that allow students and staff to make better decisions. You then have to introduce friction, which is primarily about making the negative behavior more difficult. And so these frictions might include restrictions or policies. They might include financial costs. So for example, in these photos, going back to the coffee cup, it's more expensive to buy coffee in a disposable cup. And if you want to enter our university buildings with your coffee, you're welcome to bring your coffee, but you are not permitted to bring a disposable cup into the building. So by creating little bits of friction, you can instigate or nudge towards the responsible behavioural change. And then we have to exemplify and live by example. And that and here you can see Professor John O'Halloran, our current president, and our former president, Patrick O'Shea, signing up to a commitment to make UCC single-use plastic-free by 2023. And this is a commitment that they made based on a petition that was brought to them by our Green Campus Committee and our Students' Union. And that brings me nicely to our third enabler, which is leading by committing. And by this, I mean that we have to practice what we preach. And we also have to not be afraid of taking risks and leaps of faith into the unknown to lead by example. And so, for example, the commitment to becoming plastic free is a difficult one, but it is something that we are committed to. And we also have, in order to lead by committing, you also have to ensure that sustainability is included in all of our university policies and strategies. And that's at every level, the academic strategy, the strategic plan, the sports strategy, whatever you know. And as a university with a population of 25,000 people, we have real capacity to make change. And actually one of the places where we can make most of our change is where we spend our money. And so sustainability has since been integrated into our procurement policy. It is really central to where we spend our money and also where we invest our money. And so we are signatories of the UN-backed principles of responsible investment, through which we have divested from fossil fuels, and we have also committed to making ethical, socially responsible and environmentally conscious decisions in all of our investment. But going back to what Tom and Martin both highlighted, the sustainability is far greater than just being green. And this is especially important as we are in the decade for action on the Sustainable Development Goals. And we have recently started to challenge ourselves more on looking at aspects of equality and diversity, intersectionality, poverty and injustice, and how those are interacting with our environmental sustainability, and where can we have wider influence as a university of scale. Our fourth enabler then is how we link with our learning and our curriculum and our teaching and our research in order to create graduates that are sustainability.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you finish it in 1 or 2 minutes?
Yes, yeah, of course. So we've been integrating sustainability across our curriculum in terms of the core curriculum, which is the formal program of study that the students take, our hidden curriculum, which is where our values and beliefs impact on the students. And this especially comes from the educators and how they influence the students, and our co-curriculum, which is where our students learn from actively participating in student events and participation in the decision-making process. But when we did our STARS assessment in 2018, we found that only 6% of our core curriculum addressed sustainability directly. So we thought, oh, hey, okay, here's a gap we need to fill. So we have developed a new academic strategy where the connected curriculum is at the core, and we have sustainability, trans and interdisciplinarity, global reach and community engagement as some of the key pillars. And we're now challenging and working with all of our academic staff and educators to understand and have empathy for the social and cultural contexts, and to explore what is possible and appropriate in an interdisciplinary manner. So for example, here the teal circles are the SDGs on climate change, and we can see that we know that the climate crisis has always been siloed as a scientific crisis. But the issues are not just scientific and technological, they're also primarily human. And so from this, we have created a university-wide module, which is taught by over 20 staff from across the university. And it is localized to the SDGs and transdisciplinary in its teaching. And so we hope that we have created a ecosystem of sustainability with top-down, bottom-up and middle-out approaches to sustainability across the campus. And we hope that all of our graduates are empowered to political action, civic engagement, personal responsibility, and that they're able to communicate and share their learnings with others and collaborate to find solutions to societal challenges. And I just want to finish with the great power that we have as universities and the responsibility we have as universities to generate knowledge and socially responsible students. And I just finally want to finish with an image of some of our students that we're really, really proud of, our actively engaged environmental society and green campus students. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Reidy. I think your presentation is quite enlightening. So, Albert, are you ready now?
I hope, yeah, I'm here at least.
Okay,
can you hear me?
You can start.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. If you can share your screen and show the slides, that would be great.
Yes, it's okay. You can see. Yes, it's okay.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can switch the first one. It's just the title. So as it was said before, I work at EPFL. Yeah, if you can even switch to the next one, please. I work at EPFL. So the EPFL is the Swiss Institute of Technology, which is a university with around 12,000 students, most of them doing studies in engineering. There is also a school of architecture, but it's quite oriented towards quantitative studies. It is a quite dynamic university, place located near to Lausanne. If you can switch the slide, please.
Yes.
There are a lot of activities related to sustainability at the level of the campus. So here you have some examples. most of them related to food, which is one sector where the university is particularly active, where we have put in place several systems to reduce waste generation. We also support local producers with markets held at the university once a week. And we have also developed several actions related to participatory vegetable gardens. Well, this is at the level of the campus. You have everything explained on the website. It's quite intuitive. So I wanted today to speak rather about what we do in terms of teaching. So before my presentation, we have already seen that there are several levels at which we can make disruptions related to sustainability at the university level. So you have one level, which is the campus itself, and then teaching. And it is quite important that these two scales are coherent with each other. You can switch the slide, please.
Yes.
So at EPFL, I'm working at the chair for urban ecology, which is probably the only team at EPFL which tries to make the link between sustainability and social sciences. So this is maybe the first level of disruption. It has been a kind of earthquake in the EPFL microcosm to create this chair. It was created 4 years ago, and we try to show, to demonstrate the fact that we cannot work with sustainability issues if we just apply quantitative approaches, just optimizing, developing algorithms, but that there is always a social, a political, human side behind sustainability, and that we need to make this integration between quantitative and more qualitative political studies. And that's what we are trying to do. It is not easy, but we are creating our space in this quite quantitative-oriented universe. You can switch the slide, please. So just to give you an idea, this is the kind of research that we develop in this team. So we work on urban metabolism, developing studies on material flow accounting. We work on sustainability transitions, focusing on the urban scale, and then on the different standpoints, perspectives that we can have on urban sustainability, and putting a particular emphasis on sustainability assessment. And this is more specifically the research field where I develop my own research. Can you switch the slide, please? So regarding the teaching activities, I am co-responsible of a course on sustainability assessment at EPFL at the master level. We have every year around 60 students. Most of them, as I said before, do studies in engineering. And at the very beginning of the course, we try to explain our approach on sustainability problems. And the way we do that, well, I always use this reference to Gregory et al. And Batten and Bromley, where we try to explain the fact that it's not about discovering a solution that is somewhere out there, but that it is rather about co-building a solution that is acceptable for all of them, even if it is impossible to have the best solution for all the criteria that the sustainability problem always deal with. And we have this metaphor of the archaeologist and architect that is a little bit disappointing sometimes for the students, because it's probably less exciting to play the role of an architect that is involving the different local actors to build something that makes sense to all of them, than to be Indiana Jones. But that's the reality we have to cope with. If you can switch, please. So what I wanted to do today is to show the way we proceed with two very simple examples, okay? The first one is at the individual level. So what we want to do with this very basic example is to show the fact that all of us, we have to deal with sustainability dilemmas in our current life. And to do that, we take this example of mobility. So we imagine that we have to travel from Lausanne or from Geneva to Paris, and we have to decide which transportation mean we want to use. And so there are several options. You can use your car, you can take BlaBlaCar, you can take EasyJet, TGV Ligia, so you have several options. And then, of course, each of us considers more or less in an explicit way several criteria. And this is very disruptive for the students, even if it seems to be very simple, because it shows how difficult it is to deal with this plurality of criteria. And something that is also difficult for them to accept and to discover, because it's about discovering for them at the end of the day, is the fact that when we work on sustainability, most often we have to deal with very different measurement units. So here, as you can see, we have monetary units, you have kilograms, you have time, you have qualitative Likert scales, and you have to cope with all these very diverse kind of indicators or criteria. And most often, of course, you don't have accurate data for all of them. So each student has to think about this problem, and he has to show to the group how he will do it. And it's quite interesting to have later on discussions and compare the kind of criteria that each of them took into account. If you can switch the slide. And something quite important is that something that we have seen over time is that even if we want to put a lot of emphasis on problem framing, because these students, they are overtrained in terms of quantitative analysis, but they have never done conceptual work, it's quite difficult for them to frame a problem at the very beginning of the assessment. Even if we do that, it is quite important to not replace their own language, but rather to complement it with new kind of social-oriented languages. And so this idea of putting things together is quite important. And here I wanted to show that the same matrix that I have shown before with very basic stuff, then we translate it with a multi-criteria software in something that it is more, that it is easier for them to see the practical, the tangible side, and something that they are more familiar with. And that's quite important. When we started the course, we didn't use this software, and we saw that the discussion was remaining at a conceptual level that was not easy for them. So that's, I think, a key message that I wanted to share with you from our experience. So it is the same information, but shown in different languages. If you can switch the slide, please. Once we have worked at the individual level with this kind of dilemmas that we have to deal with internally, we switch to the societal level. So now we ask, with this second example, we ask students to work in group together. And again, it's something quite basic. So we have built cards, as you see in the left side of the slides. Each card has an indicator, a sustainability indicator that we have found in the literature. Each card has also the logos of the SDGs that are related to the indicator at hand. And behind the card, you cannot see it, but we have also a qualitative and narrative definition explaining the meaning of the indicator. And so each group of students has around 40 different indicators, and they are asked to build a set of indicators to monitor, to assess sustainability at the urban level. We give them 5 different cities at the European level, and they have to select no more than 10 indicators. And this exercise is quite important for us because it shows the importance of opportunity cost. When you decide to put in the set one particular indicator, this indicator is taking the place of another one. And it means that you will have to withdraw some issues that might be important, but you cannot put everything because otherwise your set is not operational. And of course, it was already quite difficult to do this kind of exercise when you do it alone, but when you have to deal with other people who combine different values, and we ask them to play different roles, representing different actors in a typical, in a prototypical urban sustainability assessment, then it becomes even more complex. And it is quite interesting to see how they react. They are totally lost at the beginning, and then they start discovering the exciting side of being a social architect. If you can switch the please.
Sorry, Albert, can you finish it in 2 minutes?
Yeah, it's totally doable. So 2 more slides. Again, once they have done this selection of indicators, we have a lot of people in the, if you can come back, please. We have several PhDs supporting us in teaching this course. So we are able to take the cards that they have selected, and we have all the data for 30 different European capitals, and we can show them the kind of rankings that derive from the set of indicators that they have selected. And again, to use this quantitative side, this practical example, so that they can see the impact of their selection into the final ranking is quite expressive, and it works very well. So then you can compare the different rankings based on the different sets that they have built by groups. If you can switch to my last slide, please. So with these two very basic examples, I wanted to insist on three kind of lessons that we have learned over time. First, that it is quite important when you work with this kind of students, so high skills, but particularly in quantitative analysis, it is very important to clarify the expectations that they might have from your course from the very beginning, because otherwise there is a frustration that increases all over the semester. So it's quite important to explain the kind of approach that you want to develop with them. The second idea that I wanted to insist on is the fact that it is important to use, I already said it, to use their own language. It's not about replacing their language, but to complement it with other kind of more conceptual, qualitative oriented languages. And last point, then I will have finished my presentation. What we have seen is that it is useful to start with very practical and basic examples, and from these observations, then to move towards more conceptual ideas. I remember when I started doing the course, well, the first course was about rather complex ideas like incommensurability, epistemological and ontological complexity, and actually they were all lost after 30 minutes. Now we have done the inverse process, so we start with these examples that I have shown before, and we move progressively towards this concept so that they understand where the concept is coming from, and it works rather well. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much, and yeah, looking forward for the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Albert. Now, turn to our last speaker for this roundtable, Professor Hocine Sadok is the Dean of the Faculty of Social, Economic, and Legal Sciences at the University of Alsace. He is leading a Master in Sustainable Development program. He will talk about the progress of campus transformation and the difficulties in translating the wishes of students and staff into concrete achievement regarding sustainable development goals. Are you with us, Professor Sadok?
Yes, thank you.
It's your turn. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I have no PowerPoint to share, but the last PowerPoint is still on the screen. If someone can move it, so I can make my presentation without PowerPoint, if it's possible.
Okay, the committee, can you help?
We can see you, Hocine.
Oh, okay, but
Yes.
I'm still seeing the PowerPoint of the last
Don't worry,
speaker.
we can see.
Okay.
Move it, please. Thank you. My presentation will consist of a sharing of experience of what I have experienced in my university, a university of 10,000 students, and for my faculty, 2,000 students. The value of sustainable development can be summed up by considering them as a responsibility toward the environment, which has been translated in the main international conference or international organization as a responsibility toward climate's impact. For example, in the emission by public or private institutions, or even by individuals of greenhouse gas. The objective is then to find ways to collectively reduce this carbon footprint. But it is also our impact on biodiversity, in particular this denial of the right of other species, whereas our responsibility requires us to respect this diversity of living things. And finally, without that, a dimension that is not sufficiently identified as a component of sustainable development, social cohesion, whatever the territory in which it is understood. Read it there as an essential value of sustainable development, a demand for social generation on territorial equity. The university then constitutes a key player insofar as sustainable development is understood as a dynamic design not to compromise the development of future generations. It is through it that the conscience of young adults is transmitted and shaped, and they will soon be called upon to exercise economic, social, institutional, and administrative responsibility within society. From this perspective, the university appears to be both a place of training designed to transmit knowledge and to share knowledge on the challenge of sustainable development. This is what we can read in the declaration of the Ministry of Higher Education or of the Conference of University Presidents, notably during their meeting on June 5, 2020, in the framework of the World Environment Day, which was held at the University of Haute-Alsace in Mulhouse. The main elements of this statement are as follows. Higher education as close as possible to the transition and progress. University and grandes écoles have an essential role to play in anticipating and accompanying ongoing transition. Integrate the ecological transition transversally, integrate this team in the training of staff and teachers, ensure the generalization of responsible practice, make sustainable development a common thread in the functioning of institutions, campuses, and student life. That's the statement of the French Conference of the President. But the university must also be a place of exemplarity. This is the condition for speeches not to go ahead, so that the younger generation can be nourished by this exemplarity of practice and implementation. There is no point then in convincing people in our training course of the urgency of climate change if at the same time, for example, we do not show the institution's capacity to reduce its own greenhouse gas emission. Similarly, if no action in favor of biodiversity, for example, respect for black frames on campus is taken, empathy for other species, risk remain abstract. Within the faculty that I lead, we have implemented several actions which are struggling to be carried out quickly because of difficulties that I would like to share with you. The implementation of an energy efficiency and sobriety policy promoted by the university under an ISO 50001 certification. Its bureaucratic nature makes the implementation of the action imposed in this framework very far removed from the perception of students and staff. The implementation of a waste sorting policy on site, which does not arouse the enthusiasm of the faculty user, certainly because of its diffuse and incidental nature. The installation of a terrace in the extension of the faculty cafeteria. We want it to be a link of exchange between student, staff, and resident. This project does not present any particular technical difficulty, but it does not manage to emerge at the same time because of the current health crisis, but above all, because of the consultation mechanism of this project. I wanted that this project will be piloted by the student for its design. They had to organize consultation with administrative staff and local residents. This consultation has been going on for more than a year and a half without any project really taking shape. The transformation of part of the roof of the faculty into a green terrace that will allow for recreational or educational activities. It is
I'm sorry, Professor Sadok, can you finish it in 1 or 2 minutes? Okay. We are running out of time. Okay.
I just hear 5 minutes for me, 6 minutes. So I have 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Too long, probably. Yeah, okay.
I've got this. Thank you.
So it's unfair to you. You can go on. Dan.
Thank you. The transformation of part of the roof of the faculty into a green terrace that would allow for recreational or educational activities. It is an action that I supervise directly. This project too has been slow to emerge because of its architectural technicality and its cost. The importance of this project forced us to carry it out by trying to associate partners such as local authorities, which slowed down the implementation of this project. The implementation of an ecology certificate, conceived as an online training about 30 hours that should be followed by all first-year students for the validation of the training. This certificate, supported by the European Institute of Ecology in Metz and the University of Haute-Alsace, is intended to raise awareness among first-year students of the challenge of sustainable development. Here again, the temporality of its implementation is difficult due to the diversity of training courses and the specificities of each training component. Those in charge of training courses do not want to increase the number of hours of teaching for students, but at the same time, they refuse to give up part of the disciplinary timetable of the course. When students and administrative staff are questioned about this different action, the essential element in terms of sustainable development value focus on the issue of social cohesion, place and terrace to meet each other, joint training to identify with common value, common practice, vast waste sorting, implementation of energy saving to create common society. Wouldn't, and that the question I ask now for this end of this presentation, wouldn't the essential value of what we do and what motivate us to do is be then social cohesion, the Platonic research of thematic empathy. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Sadok. And I think your presentation, although it needs a concentration to hear about it, but it's very good. You touch upon the social cohesion. So may I invite all the speakers to show up your face here? Okay, Tom, Martin,
Yes,
Albert,
Yes.
and Darren. Okay, we have about 11 minutes for discussion. So if anybody from the audience want to ask questions, you can go to the chat or conversation plane. If no, then I will just stimulate the discussion by asking Martin. You mentioned about wicked problem. Can you explain or explore a little bit about that? Because this is more familiar in the design field.
I can give a simple definition. A wicked problem is a situation where action is needed, but there is no simple definition of the problem or the action. So that's the simple paradoxical definition. What I think is important is that a wicked problem is one where people bring quite different vision as to what matters, as to what could be done or what should be done at different levels, and also as to why different actions are important or not. So that means that a wicked problem has got diversity at the level of representation of the problem itself, but also at the level of the vision of possible action and at the level of judgments about what is good or bad and why it is good or bad to act in different ways. That's a simple definition. What that also brings as a consequence or a corollary is that we have to put ourselves inside a wicked problem in order to build capacity to act, and we don't have a final judgment about the outcome. And that I would like to say, I'm working in a French institutional context. I would like to contrast that with what is typically referred to as a Cartesian perspective on knowledge. Cartesian perspective, I'm not talking about Descartes, I'm talking about what people say with his name, is that we look at the system from the outside, we learn about the system, and we calculate what we should do. This relates to what Albert called the archaeological perspective. Whereas what I would like to suggest is that we need to consider that we are actually not just in a boat together in a river, but we have actually had a shipwreck and we are in the water in the river together, and we have to work out whether we can build a new opportunity for society. This is the way I would characterize a wicked problem, is that we are all in the soup or in the marmite or in the water together, and we have to build a new future together, and we don't have certainty about what that means and how it will be done. That is a wicked problem.
Okay, great. Now I want to refer to all the speakers. Do all of you think that overcoming COVID is a kind of wicked problem?
Maybe there is a question I see.
Okay.
Someone asked, if you look at someone asked, what is smart campus according to the participant to the round table? I don't know if someone wants to answer.
This is kind of us to wrap up the panel. So it must be a kind of conclusion. It is quite contradictory to the roundtable discussion, which possibly will lead to no one conclusion. But okay, let me continue the issues Martin had raised. I give an example about COVID-19. Do all of you think about overcoming COVID will well represent that kind of problem? Probably Martin can respond it first.
I'm going to give a very short response because I've written about that topic already during the past 8 months. It's obvious that the challenge is the purpose of responding to the coronavirus pandemic. Is it a question of saving lives? Is it a question of avoiding economic collapse? Is it a question of maintaining quality human relation? Is it a question of dignity in the face of death? At every level, these dilemmas about what is at stake are expressed in a completely disorderly way, and 12 months after the beginning of this crisis, the disorder is just as great, just as deep. There is considerable dilemmas about how urgently we should treat the vaccination processes. But think about it. What would happen in the current world if we did not have the belief that effective vaccination is very soon available? What would be the appropriate social strategy? And that is actually a reality for many societies in the world, which means that dealing with vulnerability on the basis of denying vulnerability is probably a very confused way of addressing the problem. I've said enough. I think that the COVID crisis is a very deep example of a wicked problem.
Great. Would you like to respond, Darren? Because you have such an experience for doing this green campus.
Sure. I'm not entirely, I would completely agree that the COVID-19 crisis is indeed a wicked problem. But one of the things that I've learned, I'm very new to my role at University College Cork. I'm only in the role 6 months, but I was one of the original students that was involved in launching the campaign 15 years ago. I was one of those students that voiced my concern over environmental management practices on campus. And now looking at the university from a different perspective as a member of staff that's involved in managing the university or delivering sustainability in the university, I've learned that what I thought I knew about the environment and what I thought I knew about people is very different to what I'm actually being told from the student body. And that's something that I have really realized in the last 6 months, is that no matter what we think we know, there's always a different perspective from when you have so many people coming together in one place. And I think that's one of the real rewards that I've had from my role as a sustainability officer, is listening to the students, and how when I think of sustainability as primarily an environmental problem, the students correct me and challenge me and say, no, it's a societal problem, it's an equality problem, it's a justice problem. And it really helps us to reflect on where we stand as an institution and where we should be using our weight to create influence.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Probably Tom, you are a philosopher. Can you make a statement about that?
Yes, I agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has put us in this sea where we are swimming. So definitely there are wicked problems arising. When I think of wicked problems, I also relate it to that there are no fixed solutions. We don't really know what to do, so we are swimming. And also there are interrelated challenges. And in my perspective, and also we saw that in several of the presentations, we actually have to manage this challenge. I mean, okay, how should we teach, for example? So we saw Martin's presentation as a good example. So we need to develop ways of managing that problem. At Aalborg University, we also had to manage that problem. And the students, and actually how it was done was that it was there was a decision made on the top level, actually on the governmental level, that we should switch into these online teaching tools. Okay, but then it was actually very much up to the teachers themselves to find out what to do. There was some support, but it was actually up to themselves. The students, they were longing to be included, to be asked, okay, how can we do this in a good way? But of course, teachers were supposed to learn about these tools, and then they had the problem of resources. Okay, yes. So I agree that it is actually we are in a situation, a wicked problem situation now, and I think that the management somehow should try to support the involvement of all these people who are struggling with this and facing these problems. And that include in the online teaching, for example, the teachers and the students, and somehow to support that they are actively involved. And there it was very interesting also to hear how far Darren and Cork was on involving, and I think you had an advantage of having this, participatory infrastructure already in place. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Tom. Probably, Hocine, you want to make a comment, because we still have 1 minute. Turn on your mic.
Thank you. I just answer on the chat. For me, a smart campus is just a campus where there is not boundaries between teachers, staff, and students. We have to act like an ecosystem, and every member of the university have to work together on this thematic sustainable development. It's not because I'm a teacher, I have a privilege in it for this question. That's a smart campus for me.
Okay, thank you thanks to all of you. Albert, probably last but not least, your comment, short, please.
Well, yeah, well, I think everything was said, but definitely I think that the current situation is, as I see it, is a kind of external shock that is shaking path dependency. And that's good. I prefer to see it in that way. I see that things are moving forward, at least at EPFL, and all the teachers have to think again about the way they were COVID. So just in that way, it is a good driving force. This is how I perceive it.
Okay, so COVID-19 actually can be a blast if it pushes us to be more creative. So thank you all of our distinguished speakers. I will applaud for all of you. So I return to the master ceremony.
Thank you very much to all participants of this roundtable. Thank you very much, Professor Gunawan Tjahjono. Now I suggest to make a small break, and we go back in about 10 minutes for the keynote speaker, Professor Taddy. So I see to you later in 12 minutes. See you later. Thank you.